Hello, and welcome to Rodent World Tonight. My name is Magnus Dormus, and my guest is Mr. Ukaru. Good evening, Magnus. It's a pleasure to be here. Mr. Ukaru, what kind of justice can a monkey expect from the world of rodents? I'm glad you asked that, Magnus. In his expose, author George H. Pate has discovered a transcript of what transpired in my trial, and I would like to have him read some of that. A couple of stragglers prevented the resumption of deliberations until 9:15 that morning. Not a few of the jurors looked sleepy on account of their retiring to bed late that previous evening. With the end of their duties in sight, they had been rather too wound up to get a normal night's rest. Now that all were present, the chief bailiff closed the door and posted a guard at both the door leading into the courtroom and the door which opened to the hallway which led to the court lobby area. The foremouse opened the negotiations by reading aloud the relevant sections of both intellectual property law and the Mope Act. The subsequent debate was a fierce one. Juror 12's outlook had not mellowed over the previous night. Really, this is simple. You have a rodent against a monkey. Forget about any laws and stuff. We have to vote for the rodent. Juror 101 fixed him with a dagger-like stare and asked, "Why?" "We can't let a monkey win. Next they'll want to have the right to vote and own property. That would send this country straight to the arms of the anti-cheese. Nope, can't let a monkey win." The foremouse said, "We all know your views on the matter, but pardon the rest of us if we wish to discuss this case on its merits. I guess that many of us want a clarification from the judge about whether the law applies to everyone or just rodents. Do we agree that we should send a note to him to ask about it?" Juror 12 shook his head and intoned, "You're wasting your time. You already heard what the law says and the correct interpretation." Juror 196 said, "We heard Dorothy's lawyer say that he thinks it's what it says, but we didn't hear what the judge say one word about it. Let's send the note." 11 of the jurors agreed to ask Judge Van Springhaus about the passage in the law that seemed to be open to interpretation. The foremouse signaled the chief bailiff and handed him the note when he answered the summons. "I'll give this to His Honor right away, but I don't know how long it will take to get a reply. Usually he's pretty quick about answering questions." He then left the room, and the jurors continued with other aspects of the case. The foremouse asked, "What about this claim that since Ukaru lives in Verifaria, that he can't sue for stuff that happens in cheap labor stand? Is there anything about that in the excerpts that the judge gave us?" Juror 101, the keeper of the handout, leafed through the 2 pages several times and shook his head. "Apparently, we have some kind of treaty with Verifaria. We can mutually extradite rodents and stuff like that, but it doesn't say anything about which laws apply when a rodent from one country does business in the other." Juror 12 said, "Doesn't matter if it says anything or not. We're still talking about rodents and monkeys. Monkeys lose." Juror 164 slammed his paw down on the table and hissed, "We all know what you think. Why don't you just keep quiet and leave the reasoning to those of us with brains?" "Well, what are you going to do then?" Juror 164 got up from his chair, stomped around to face Juror 12 and said, I want you to tell me how this paper tastes when you're done eating it." He brandished a spare notepad in Juror 12's face to make the point abundantly clear. The foremouse called out, "Hey, you two, let's keep the lid on. Remember, we don't have to have a unanimous vote. So if someone in the room believes that monkeys don't exist, then that belief is only 1/12 of the vote." That reminder seemed to be of great comfort to Juror 164. He retreated back to his chair and slaked his anger with a surreptitious, obscene paw gesture when the others weren't looking at him. Additional close study of the law excerpt provided no illumination on the question of which law applied where. It seemed that the jurors were free to form their own conclusion. A knock on the door heralded the return of the chief bailiff. The foremouse got up and received the note that was passed through the opening, and then went back to the table to read the judge's reply to their question. The foremouse's expression was one of incredulity as he silently read the note. The others patiently waited for the note to be read aloud. The judge says that while there is no exact precedent in this situation, he believes that the wording of the law means that it only applies to rodents. Non-rodents have no protection under the law. Juror 12 slapped the table and said to the entire group, "I told you so." "What does the reply say exactly?" asked Juror 101. "It's just like I read before. The judge doesn't think that it applies to monkeys." "Doesn't think. The judge is giving his interpretation. It's not stated as fact, is it?" "No, not really. The note doesn't say that it doesn't apply, only that he doesn't think that it applies." Juror 135 said, "Let me see the note." The foremouse said, "Here, pass it around the table after you've finished and let everyone read it." It took 20 minutes or so for the note to make its rounds. Juror 12 simply passed it along when it came to him, since its comments wouldn't sway his vote one way or another. The foremouse regained the note from the last juror and asked the jurors if they were ready to cast their votes for a verdict. A show of paws indicated that the time had come. Judge Van Springhaus bid the chief bailiff to enter when the knock on the door came. He had been joined by Judge Jerd and the rep from the AP's office to await the jury's decision, and all had been nervous for their different reasons. Jan was directly in the firing line. Jawinda had been worried about the court and its relationship with the AP, and the rep had been hoping that all would go as urged and his task would be over with no fuss. His Honor opened the note from the jury and immediately closed his eyes, hands slightly trembling at the consequences of the jury's decision. He handed the note to Jawinda, who muttered a soft curse after she read it. The rep said, "I take it that the jury has decided to buck the law." Judge Van Springhaus said, "It's not established law in this particular case. There is no precedent for the exact circumstances here." "Then, Your Honor, I presume you will establish a precedent for the good of the rodents here in Cheap Labor Stand. Election time draws near." Jawinda said, "What are you going to do, Jan?" He studied the floor for a bit before calling out, "Bailiff!" The door opened and the chief bailiff said, "Yes, Your Honor?" "Tell the jurors that they can go home and thank them for their service. I will address the litigants in about 10 minutes, and they don't have to stand up when I come in this time." The chief bailiff dismissed the jurors, and when the rodents awaiting the decision saw them start to leave, they roused themselves for the appearance of the judge. In a few minutes the door of his chamber opened, and a solemn Judge Jan Van Springhaus took his seat at the bench. Everyone stood up anyway, expecting that the command to rise would be given as it always had been. Will Ms. Dorothy and Mr. Ukaruk, together with their counsel, please come forward and stand before the bench? The two parties gathered as instructed, and the judge looked around the courtroom before continuing. I'm George H. Pate, author of the book Moralis Rodentus, which is available at Amazon.com as an ebook. Please visit my website at www.georgehpate.com for links to all of my works. These also include The Devil's Footprint, Leonard, and Marcus's Journal. Thank you very much for your time.